This is Robert Kraft, and I'm your host on SNN.Network. And joining me right now is Shafin Diamond Tejani. He is the chairman and CEO of Victory Square Technologies. It's a publicly traded company. The symbols are VST on the CSE and VSQTF on the OTC. And you can actually see Shafin do a presentation at our upcoming virtual event, the SNN.Network Summer Virtual Event, happening August 17th through 19th, 2021. Be sure to register at conference.snn.network to see his presentation. With that, Shafin, thank you for joining me today. How you doing?
Thanks for having me, man. Excited to share our story with you and your listeners.
No, it's great to have you on. So this is actually our first time doing a video interview together. So as is tradition here, could you please start us off with a quick overview and history of the company?
Yeah, so Victory Square Technologies was created around 2017. The thesis is that we give investors ground floor access to a diverse portfolio of over 20 companies from around the world in key sectors such as digital health, gaming, esports, augmented and virtual reality, the creator economy, cybersecurity, and green tech. So these are basically companies that are the next generation of tech giants. These companies come from over 80 accelerators from around the world. So tech is borderless. So we're poaching some of the smartest and brightest people from all over. And Victory Square is usually the first check-in. So we operate what's called the venture build model. So investors basically get access to 28 chances to knock it out of the park with shares in VST. We've got a very healthy balance sheet, 5 consecutive quarters of positive net income and earnings per share. We paid a share dividend earlier this year. And we're, like you mentioned earlier, we're publicly traded in Canada, in Europe, on the Frankfurt, and in the US.
Okay, so I'd love to know a little bit more about what makes the company unique and different. I mean, what's some of the criteria that you look for potential investment? And then what's like a typical investment size?
So what makes us unique? I mean, I would say the first thing is our, basically process, people, and product. And from a process perspective, people always ask, how do we find needles in a haystack? Where we basically built the magnet. Over the last 20 years, our team has established relationships with about 80 accelerators from around the world. So, Berlin, Germany, Tallinn, Estonia, Delhi, India, Sao Paulo, Brazil. And we're picking some of the top companies and entrepreneurs from all over the world, and we're able to, because we've established these relationships, we're able to find some of these needles in a haystack. Then what we do is we work with those companies for anywhere from 12 to 48 months. So we've got great relationships with large enterprise clients who can be these companies' first customers, but we work with them to validate their business model, commercialize it, and then spin out the company as its own public entity, similar to what we did with Fans Unite last year and Game On recently in June, and what we'll be doing with Immersive. And then for VST shareholders, every time we spin out a company, we issue a share dividend, and it unlocks value for Victory Square, as a company. So, there's a lot of things that make us unique, but I would say that process and that access to these best companies from around the world would kind of be number one. And then I think from a product perspective, it's interesting because Victory Square was built to give retail investors access to some of these top companies. So you don't have to have 250 grand and invest in a private fund. We're publicly traded, we're liquid, we're audited, transparent. So for investors, you're getting access to this diversity, this basket. You're not invested in a one-trick pony. You've got all of this that really gives you a shot. So I think from a product perspective, it's very unique. Alignment with management. So we were seeded. The management team and myself invested the first $10 million that was basically put into building this basket of companies. So I would say that makes us unique is our process, our people and our product.
Got it. So tell me a little bit more about the process. Let's say, okay, so as you said, you have all these relationships with various accelerators around the world. All right, you call up your buddy in Sao Paulo, like, what do you got? What are some of the questions you're asking some of the newer or more interesting technologies that are coming out of there when you're looking at doing a potential investment in those businesses?
So no, good question. So before we even look out for anything, we've identified a pain point. So it has to be a space or sector that we've seen that there's a big opportunity in, or we think that there's going to, be a big opportunity. And we've found in the tech space extraordinary performance or asymmetrical returns come from being able to see things other people can't see. So once we've identified these areas that we have some subject matter expertise in, or based on our DD, it's a space we want to be in, and we feel like we can do some damage. We then almost, in essence, put out an RFP to all these accelerators. So asking them, is anyone working on anything, with respect to this? And there are a couple of keys to, once we find a company that's been vetted, that we think is strong. A lot of times when we're finding a gem in India, the valuation is lower. The founding team has this hunger and this drive, which is very key. So because we're usually the first check in a company, the founding and management team is usually like the key, the key to this, because the startup and entrepreneurial journey is a roller coaster, and you really need to bet on the right jockey that's going to be able to navigate, not quit. Their why really needs to be strong. So we get to see all of these top companies. Valuation and entry point is very important for us, so we usually get in a very good entry point. But ultimately, once we found that company, it's because we already knew that we wanted to get into that space. So and we roll up our sleeves and work with that company. So this venture build model is we're not passive investors. We actively get engaged in working with these companies, leveraging all our relationships to really help these companies kind of scale and grow.
Very good. And what's your background? I mean, how'd you get into all this?
So my background goes back into the dot-com kind of era. So I was one of those kids kind of tinkering with computers in the mid 90s and trying to make games on my computer. And when I was in university, we started an online dating site. But it was because we saw how not just personalized computers, but how the internet at that time was going to really disrupt the way we connected with people, accessed information, worked and played. And for me, there were two areas. One, as a university student wanting to meet people, girls, building a dating site seemed like a natural kind of thing, and then building mobile games after that. But at that point, we built a business that was easy to translate globally. So soft, low tech, which was the online dating site. We were able to launch this globally. We became very good at driving users. And then we started to buy, build, and invest in businesses that we could port users from one site to another, or that were solving pain points in our existing business, which is the venture build model that VST kind of applies today. But having started in the mid 90s, we've been at the forefront of the PC movement, the internet movement, the mobile movement, and what today we kind of refer to as Web 3.0 when you look at crypto and decentralization. So, we've had 20 plus years, catching successive waves, always kind of being in the water before the waves come. So we're first in catching, these big waves. So yeah, my background goes back, man, 20 plus years, in tech.
And Shafin, from what you can tell us, what would you say are some of the company's value catalysts now moving forward?
Yeah, so we have some big catalysts, I would say, in the next 90 to 120 days that investors can keep an eye out for. In August, we'll be spinning off another portfolio company called Immersive Technologies in the augmented and virtual reality space, in which we'll be giving a shared dividend to VST shareholders. So if you're a VST shareholder by a cutoff date, you'll get a shared dividend in Immersive when it gets spun off. Our Q2s, which ended June 30th, will be reported at the end of August. So again, another strong quarter in our minds. Investors can keep an eye out for. Another portfolio company called Stardust Solar will be spun out in November, and investors can again look out for another share dividend. And then there's some new investments that we've made that I think are exciting around the creator economy, called Creator.co, which we've got some exciting things happening there. And I think just keeping an eye out for some of the breakthroughs in our digital health business, specifically what we're doing in Brazil.
Shafin, so I have to ask, because I already hear my audience being like, Bobby, ask this damn question. So what's next, man? I mean, you have all these years of experience. What is next? What's the big thing in tech right now?
So there's a lot of heat coming. I mean, there's certain areas that we're diving deeper into today, but I think, and a lot of your listeners have probably heard of Kathy Wood and ARK Invest, and they talk about these, 5 innovation platforms that are all kind of crossing at once. So whether it's DNA sequencing, robotics, energy storage, blockchain. So in a lot of these sectors, these are sectors that we have touch points in. But I think for us, some of the ones that we're doubling down on, there's kind of 3 areas: next generation internet, digital health, and climate or the circular economy. These 3 areas all are impact quality of life. And so these are 3 areas that we're kind of, doubling down on. So with next generation internet, we've got a number of companies that are in the gaming and crypto and blockchain decentralization kind of space, augmented and virtual reality. We saw the pandemic accelerate adoption of a lot of different technologies. And so, things like cybersecurity, these are areas where we've kind of planted seeds, which we think are going to be big. Digital health, quality of life. What good is living or having money or making money on stocks if you can't, have a high quality of life? And we've seen tremendous breakthroughs in the digital health space. We've got some anchors in that space that we're excited about. And then, again, the climate space, climate change and the circular economy. This is an emergency. I think, again, what good is wealth if we're not, you're not around on a planet to be able to, to live comfortably on it. So we've had some really good, good bets in that. And I think there's a lot of catalysts that we have over the next 90 to 120 days, where the market's going to be, going to be seeing some of the things and some of the momentum and commercialization of assets we have in those areas.
Very good. Well, with that, Shafin, where can our audience go and find more information about Victory Square?
So you can check us out, victorysquare.com. Sign up for our newsletter, and we weekly connecting with people on Twitter at VIC Square Tech, or follow me on Twitter at Shafin Diamond. And we're always very active in kind of communicating, with our audience. So
very cool. Well, with that, Shafin, thank you so much for joining me today. I really do appreciate it. Good luck, stay safe, and I look forward to our next update.
Thanks for having me. Cheers.
Cheers.